In today's episode, I am going to be expressing how I experience the super full moon that we are currently having in sidereal Aquarius, and I want to use the opportunity to set out a clarity of purpose for my channel and also create the space for growing the Aquarian archetype that is not only present in my own chart but that I can recognize in the world as a universality being expressed in the fractal illumination of when our stars and major planetary alignments link with the archetype of Aquarius. So having the moon in sidereal Aquarius oftentimes reminds us as astrologers online, to remind people of certain celebrities that may have this natal placement, and oftentimes that can be a point of departure for explaining an archetype, going on an outpour of fixed thoughts, because Aquarius is fixed air element and it relates to how we create the detached intellectual observer within the Piscean realm of emotions, which becomes in an Aquarius rising second house the foundation of the intellect, because how they go about achieving the desire to manifest their I am recognition with the knowing of Aquarius, they have to externalize from themselves the light of Leo onto the 7th house world stage in relationship to everything that meets the ego as its opposite. And the Aquarius rising life's work would be to integrate this collision of individuality as an opposite in relation to the Aquarian nature, which brings about as an air element and being fixed and neither heavy on one side or another. It can express the fact that the Gemini is the 9th house of an Aquarius, because in the heart of an Aquarius they are trying to find the balance in this library of opposite thoughts that needs to come together. So using the fact that the transit were at opposite ends tropically and sidereally of each other, so two completely different narratives were being explained, and one of them reminds you of the old age of Pisces and one of them reminds you of the new age of Aquarius. And So the fact that the sidereal is in Aquarius, whatever tropical astrologer says about sidereal astrology or 13 sign astrology not really being something that disproves their astrology. I have been following this debate online, and now I feel like the recent fact that I started my channel, I started it on a Leo topic, and I started it when the sun was ingressing into Magha Nakshatra, and I was relating to the archetype of Persephone through Asterian astrology, and it was such a lightning bolt for me to figure out that I was Prometheus Mrigashira Gemini that I just went on this I've got something that I want to like say burst of confidence. And in my previous video I made the claim that Whitney Houston was a Magha sun, and my reference for that was the Asterian astrology being syncretized with mastering the zodiac as per the sun sign ingress dates by Scorpio Oxman. And I am really grateful that he actually watched my video and he gave me a like and a comment, and he actually appreciated that I loved Asterian astrology as much as he does, you know, to want to make it like coexist on the same level as like Vedic astrology, and wanting it all to like mean something that tells the same thing, just in a different flavor, you know. Like, I didn't like the idea that some people's words for a certain term or concept could be contextually more meaningful to them based on how that word is imprinted and impressed upon them, and what are the analogies and connotations that season that word into being what they can name it, you know. So because as a child I loved Greek mythology, and it was the first book that I took out of the library, and the first game that I got on PlayStation was God of War. You know, there's just something about the fact that Scorpio Oxman corrected me with saying it's actually Pushya and in the Leo portion, and I was able to kind of like get a screenshot from one of the videos that he referred me to, where he plotted these spaces onto a mastering the zodiac chart, right? And so the Magha Nakshatra actually forms the heart of the Leo sign, which, me being, you know, programmed by the previous systems of astrology to kind of like see proximity between things, that, you know, the mastering the zodiac chart and where the actual yoga taras are, you know, and the fact that it wasn't symmetrically splitting up now over this 12-fold system that both the sidereal, whatever Ayanamsha is guilty of to a certain extent, hiding Ophiuchus, and, you know, not considering Libra as part of Virgo and Scorpio the way Blavatsky claimed. You know, I will insert here a picture where it looks like Aries and Scorpio are the opposites, and that makes more sense to me. And then Ophiuchus and Taurus are opposites, and Sag and Gemini are opposites. So what I saw in this video about the view that the Asclepius Ophiuchus character has of the ecliptic and of the northern circumpolar position and his eye on the bullseye thing, which, you know, the lower part of the old Scorpio myth is the integrated man beast Sagittarius that the Scorpio in the 12th would rise to in its precession by evolving into Sagittarius and weathering Scorpio through the virile member, which the mythology would tell you like the claw kind of attaches, you know, and like it's just amazing to see how like at the deeper levels the emission of and release of and the projectile of the orgasm and the intent behind that and the serpent energy and all these ascension community terms that coincide with new age understanding of chakras, kundalinis and all of that, but on a different level than just like the Gaia level. And I have nothing against Gaia. It was my introductory point because it was almost like Gaia was the most messed up part of the Greek mythology story, and then I kind of like glossed over it and like got absorbed into the other characters and the heroes and the demigods and so on. And then, you know, it all kind of like came full circle where like I was Prometheus bound for a while there. I was feeling like my luck was running out, or Zeus was against me because I said amen, and I don't know if that was for Amun-Ra, or I just had all this religious guilt about the way the words were fighting in my mind, you know, telling me this, telling me that, and me trying to like hold all this space for all this knowledge that people are presenting. You know, it wasn't easy because, you know, I definitely like went through it with, and just like unrelated to like anything particular that I've learned, but yet everything that I learned was part of this like shedding process of me trying to like test it out into the world and externalizing it and getting to have a reaction happen to that, and then my body needs to be the litmus test of what's true and what's not true. So I'm appreciative of Scorpio Oxman correcting me with Whitney Houston as a pusher son, and because by proximity, just visualizing things the way the mastering the zodiac has Leo on the one side for the Sun and Venus on the other side in Cancer, you would think it's Ashlesha Maga. And actually, like, that cusp is ruled by Pushya. And it made sense to me that his charting and the ingress states and the actual Yogataras made sense because, for example, there were always these little clues like, for example, the Navamsha in which a Jupiter would exalt in Cancer would be kind of like won over from like the fact that Punarvasu used to be apexed by 29 degrees Gemini back in the day before precession of the equinox, and supposedly Christ's Yode, Jesus' birth date. I will link that thing there. Pointed to 29 degrees Gemini, and Sirius was there back in the day. So there's something about that summer solstice point and that very bright point of the galactic anti-center, which is like a point of expansion, like a Big Bang Theory waiting to happen, to sing a whole new verse. So that's why I feel like Apollo and Artemis are like the sun and the moon and the galactic center and anti-center, because the height of sun is Uttra Ashada, and that Abhijit Asclepius galactic center Ketu realm, which they say Ketu is hottest and most like the sun. So it's giving me like black sun and winter sun happening in simultaneity to like northern hemisphere experiencing winter with an underworld sun, whereas the southern hemisphere is like in the peak of summer and like in the heat of hell. I'm thinking of like how these stories, like as above, so below, as within, so without, came together as stories when, people started forgetting like where the characters were drawn from, like where do you get your hero wielding a club, or your archer, or your whatever it is. It's up there, and it's in here because of the imaginative principle that you have, the God particle that you have to connect these things, whether it is Venus, whether it is Mercury, whether it is Eros, whether it is the separation of Uranus and Gaia, or irrefractality of polarity in between. This moon, Saturn, Aquarius through sidereal, mastering the zodiac connection, for me, illuminated the Bhavat Bhavam 12th from the 12th. Aquarius knowing of what to ultimately believe as their fixed thoughts, and what are they going to embody, how are they going to structure the externalization of a ego, which they will just like know everybody has, and how are they going to traverse the Aegean Sea and know that they are chimeric and two-faced, but all along being mused by Apollo, because the height of sun has been achieved with the yoking of opposites, the 9th house Gemini and the 5th house Libra, so that the intellectual value of mutable water, Aquarius, and its knowing coming from looking into the mirror internally, externally, all the time. I feel this moon with Saturn bringing to light Velikovsky's work relating Aphrodite to the moon and Saturn, and bringing to light what Asterian astrology and Greenstone Lobo and different little tidbits here and there that I've been trying to figure out brought to light about Hades and Pluto and Persephone and these underworld characters, trans-Neptunians, the broken characters, the asteroids, the rejects, all of these other parts of the family tree of the god of war that was warring in my mind with all these words just wanting to be a happy family, and relate to each other. And then finally finding like this Libra moon on the scale, kind of like a uranium art anuradha energy, like it's all coming together for me. Like I can feel into exactitudes, but I can also feel into like the merging and the cusp energies, and so I can see something like how the Navamshapada or like degree theory or numerology or something clicks in one regard. But then I can also see how it's just all coming together as narratives and tapestries of, you know, what my astrologer calls natal chart synthesis and your process of becoming. So I just wanted to integrate that with the fact that, you know, if you are experiencing cognitive dissonance or confusion, or for example, like me, I was like going through my phone and just like deleting a lot of stuff, and you know, because when I was making these videos and stuff, I'm like always looking through so many screenshots and things that like I have to think, oh my god, do I really need this? Like, can't I just like have it more streamlined and beautiful? And like I live for like a beautiful gallery, right? And sometimes I will maybe allow the external to get cluttered because I'm trying to hoard too much information and I don't process it into a system, and I just kind of like allow it all to germinate with that second house Pisces bullseye combination of archetypal symbologies, because these are just like ways we are trying to express our thought patterns and the way we can relate to universal things and things outside of ourselves because of the inherent recognition of one part of ourselves having a solipsistic outlook, which, you know, probably can be remedied if we really find our twin flame and really have the great work marriage within soul and giant alchemical product of self, turning whatever we were led by into gold. So, you know, if something led you down the road of using the words to trauma block you or to spam your mind or to chokehold you or whatever it is, like you can like bring yourself back, you can like draw it all into the galactic center of self, and you can like put it through like the furnace Purva Bhadrapada deathbed, and you can like rebirth a whole new ego. You know, that is what my life story has taught me, having Saturn in Aries tropically in the fifth. There is wisdom to be taken from that, you know, even if it obscures you, because whatever you need to know about the context of Saturn and Aries in the fifth can never be not applied. The only reason why people feel like astrology doesn't give them the results they are looking for is because they don't allow themselves to transcend the definitions of the words. They don't allow themselves to play with the words and to allow the words to like muse back to them what it means for them and what's the resonance and keys in it for them, you know. The way my name means what it means to me, somebody else might be out there with my name and it means something completely different to them. You know, the fact that I could find 2D correspondences isn't separate from the fact that within me that knowing did exist, and I just like externalized it by walking to a book or walking to Google, typing something in, and whatever you did in your mind, you were gooing black matter energy, L structuring, trying to get the light out of the dark and the dark out of the light, and contrast, Chaturvishak, chiaroscuro, clear nocte, art, because who you art in heaven and the kingdom that you have for your sovereignty on the earth, you know, it's a process of knowing how your Taurus field from the depths of your self-reflection, Scorpio in the 10th, Taurus in the 4th, for the Aquarius rising, and knowing that with a precisionized lens of it, we would see Aquarius happening in the 3rd. So or rather in the 2nd house, like in the very first video I did, Aquarius was happening in the 2nd house for Pisces, opposite Leo in the 8th. So the entire cipher that I even went through about narcissism and how it ties back into this solidification of thoughts, your own musings, becoming crystal clear as to what it means to you, how it is relevant to fixing yourself and your relationship to reality, and, you know, creating space to contain as a, you know, as a cupbearer, and generating the detachment that you need from the germination process so that you can observe what the intellectual value is. Pisces in the 2nd house, traditional exoteric. You can observe what it becomes when you are able to, you know, like Shatabisha, all those eyes, bring all those perspectives together. You know, we saw in the cipher that the eye is the Gemini, Cancer cusp of magic. So that is in the 9th house for an Aquarius. And in relation to it being, you know, if Aquarius is in the 2nd house in a precessioned cycle cipher, like in my first video, the Gemini is the 10th house. So Gemini is how Aquarius shows its Capricornian ability to structure its Uranian insight by constantly, I can see my Gemini, you know, I can see my own heart is where the law and the Akashic records and the everything that people are telling you with woohoo language is written. That's why I call myself, you know, the key keeper, because it is my name and it is me calling it from myself, even more so than calling myself Kaylin, you know, because at the end of the day, even if I was kind of like wrong about what I said about Whitney Houston, or just my thoughts playing about the word narcissism, that's me having these creative self-expressions to kind of like catch glimpses of myself. You know, I need to get a certain separation of myself, like, okay, that isn't me. Or like, what do you embody? How does this feel to you? Or like, what is different? What is that? What do you think? What do you like? That is how I think, and that is how I gather my information. Like I'm always looking for like what is new and unique and different. That is that Rahu Shatabisha ruled Uranus, and the Purva Bhadrapada Jupiter for me is just then a matter of how am I learning to do the tapasya. You know, how can I have my single pointed focus to ascend towards my route, if that makes sense. Because like for me, Pluto in Sag rising, having Aquarius in the 3rd house, that is like my mental germination process being sextiled by the Uranus to the Pluto. But for the Scorpio rising moon, Atmakaraka, 29 degrees placement, Aquarius and Jupiter is in the 4th. So 4th to my moon, I need the Aquarian process in order to do what my Scorpio does. And it's about the purity and the going to the depths and the transformation of these images. And it's like constantly recycling words. Like if they start looking ugly or they start not working, you need to like, it's like there's no deleting stuff, like there isn't a trash bin. That's what I feel like I've realized. You just have to like learn how to use your subconscious to contain. It's like pictures, and then the ink that printed the pictures was sucked off the pictures and the paper disappeared. And now like that ink is trying to like dance to the bullseye within via the contrast of this or that, the chiaroscuro and the whatever. And now it's like, that is the moon star or that is the monster. You know, it's either the Urania dots of everything pixelated of the Gemini glitters in the Eye of Soma, Mirages birth of Mars, right? That can give you like that sphere behind an arrow. Or it's just like this stuck in Rohini, impressed by the solar logos, and we don't know like those Shravana Apollos trining us, and you know the Jeshta opposite to us is like a jealous sister and brother, like not to Rohini, like not with what Asterian astrologers say, but I'm just saying like where my mind like goes with like playing with thoughts and like learning that like, you know what, you make your own immunity. Like if you light a cigarette and that box is telling you this could give you cancer, that is the code, guys. That is the virus. That is what makes that manifestation come true with someone doing it every day. So my thing is, since I've recognized that every time I light a cigarette, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm like battling the mind or slaying a hydra or going through the Herculean hero's journey of my own psychology, because I know what I'm searching for as a state of wholeness or non-separateness or purity or acceptance and compassion and shadow and light in perfect contrast coming together. Chiaroscuro, great art, mental gallery, Libra in the 5th, Gemini in the 9th, outpour with my Leo light on the 7th. For my Aquarius, Uranus, Jupiter energies, that's what it wants. If I was to put it first and ascend to it, that's how I can see my chart telling me this is how you're gonna ascend to, like giving awareness that can be reflected back to you for this energy that you contain, this potential. So the only time when you get fucked up is when all of that potential that you have on the inside is being toyed with and being it's being toyed with, but play back. Play back. Life is a game, and the people who take it so seriously, making it miserable for everybody else, I just don't know what's wrong with them. And I don't judge them anymore. And I can only be on my Athena warriors goddess mode for fighting for what would need to be right as the moment calls for it based on my principles. But I'm not going to stand here and preach and say like, I stand for this, I stand for that. We are growing and learning, and you can't be embodied in all of your fixed thoughts in one moment, because then you will like Medusa freeze. And this moon Saturn Aquarius outpour, and even the Maga veiled by Virgo season that I went through with Persephoning down the Whitney Houston conspiracy rabbit hole, and then making the mistake of not seeing the Hydra of that whole concept, So this key was about learning how to wax and wane with the structures you create for your embodiment, psychologically, somatically, emotionally, mentally, physically, and learning how to share that process with transparency and non-duality. Don't say something because you just want to be nice and don't want to say the other side, or like that chimeric thing that you do with like having a whole cloud of someone in your brain and then having a flat screen to what you have to the outside. When that collision creates a fractured mirror, the void within will pull you into the furnace, and Purva Bhadrapada will force you to purify with like the catabolic restriction that you need in order to get the other foot into Pisces, because Purva Bhadrapada has like 1 foot into Pisces, and then Uttra Bhadrapada, which is where Scorpio Oxman actually corrected me for Whitney Houston's moon rather than Revati, which I would think now is her Jupiter, because he said it's the very last degree of Uttra Bhadrapada, and because Clay Nakti's video said that was the Cinderella Nakshatra, there was definitely something about how Whitney Houston's story looked like a Cinderella story, and then it also looked like a Persephone story, and there were these two faces to it. And I think a lot of that we can see with that chimera happening in her ascendant, and there is the correction also that her ascendant is most likely in the Muses Nakshatra. I am just at this point waiting for correspondence by Scorpio Oxman, because the screenshot that I have is just not clear enough. So I asked him if he can like send me his little map of what he did, because he and I have been seeing these things on very similar frequencies, so when he explained he was on a rather moon, and in the sidereal that is also my moon rather than Cheshta. The fact of the matter is my moon is most likely Dinus, and so yes, there was a Libran impulse, yes, there was a Scorpionic impulse, yes, there was an Ophiuchian impulse, but also there was definitely a Jupiterian impulse that I just didn't think was ever really described with any of those other signs, and I just couldn't see it being either the Pluto in Sag or the Ascendant in Sag or the Jupiter in Aquarius, tropically speaking, because in the sidereal it would be debilitated in Capricorn. So there was just something about like, but why do I still find all these funny little humors amusing me, and well, lo and behold, I have these very same energies on very crucial places of identity and planets and cusps, and through natal chart synthesis and me being the type of person that just wants to understand everything, Saturn in Pisces, it's me learning that, you know what, the void isn't meant to be crystallized. Like you can embody some of its archetypes that comes through you and you can project it. Like the Leo has Scorpio in the fourth, so that's his lesson, right? But the Aquarius has Taurus in the fourth, so thinking of going to the heart of like what the Taurus field's emergence point is, and we are thinking like vortex mathematics. This is why Aquarius thinks the way it thinks. This is also why it gets healer associations, because it is the fourth or cardinal point to the Asclepius character. And the more I think about it, the more I think that the eagle on is it the world card? The eagle is Asclepius, and the bull is Orion, and the man is Aquarius. And the virgin is the lion. I am just still playing with these ideas, guys. This is where I'm at, and I hope that has been a useful set of keys on a ring, Saturn, Lord of the Rings, so that you can use your inner light, your moon eye, your moon star, your Urania to lotus flower, the Anurada of your own solar logos. Because, at one point or another you learn to create the strings theory of your own universe, and you need to play according to the harmonies created by how you tuned that instrument. So Saturn and the moon through Velikovsky's work relating to Aphrodite, which we often confuse with Venus, and Venus relating to Libra being the place where Saturn exalts, esoterically ruled by Uranus, and that relating to the myth of the castration, and why a woman's seventh house is like as the horizontal to the vertical, as the Gaia to the Uranus, is where Saturn would exalt and the sun would exalt in her first house, because like the womb and the Aries and how that looks, and the sun is in her fifth house in Leo, so like how she's, through the 6-6 bringing the child, the Christ child, from the division, the cut of Vishaka, the void, the womb of the creatrix. I feel like that was very much a golden key to this, and my Promethean silver key coming full circle again with my mirages searching star, because I have these 2 points, Chinky 12 and 11, the galactic center and anti-center for my ascendant descendant, where my sun sits at the descendant, and it is the apex of my yard for the moon in the 12th at 29 degrees Scorpio, and my Neptune in the second at 29 degrees Capricorn, which, now I am seeing more as like a 29 degrees, although, I haven't counted the degrees specifically, because Taurus and Cancer and Leo and Virgo, like they all have different amounts of degrees, and zooming in on that, it just like hurts my eyes to like try and count. But let's just, to not be too confusing with numbers that people are like, huh? The sun looks to be like 29 degrees Taurus, and then the moon 29 degrees Libra, and the Venus looks to be like 17 degrees Gemini. The sun could be 27 degrees Taurus. The Neptune could be 29 degrees Sagittarius. So it is just interesting how IAU would just shift my tropical placements back a full sign, and how the Stellarium app in Mastering the Zodiac kind of corresponds the same, notwithstanding, the little discrepancies created by the constellational bandwidth in the full circle of degrees. So that coming full circle with all these degrees we need to graduate from the universe of, cosmic intelligence, because at the end of the day, like Shravana is the listening star, and that is Capricorn, moon-ruled Asterian Apollo, which is the god of the sun. So there's always these like interesting ways in which things that you don't think belong together actually need each other as contrast, so that the body of what can be seen and tangible and fixed, as in the realm of fixed thought, and how fixed thought, ideas, concepts, technology, art, narratives, tropes, stereotypes, languages, all of these things are externalized crystallizations. It's stuff that now is a very slow, inert thing. It's like laying in the ruins of the 2D and in the subconscious of people's memory. And it's just, I love the resurrection of all of this and the revelation of all of these things happening. And I love that I've gotten a key from the universe when I was ready to put more structure to all these ideas that I've been playing with, and gaining more confidence in my voice, and living up to my Leo placements and my Maga Zenith Meridian point So I have to always bring it back to myself, and I advise everybody to learn how to bring the information back to their own embodiment in the here and now, even if it rings true on so many multiple levels and in so many different contexts of people's perspectives and experience, and everything that you hear, or every lunar reflection, or everyone who claims to be a prophet or whatever, you know, you still need to like trust yourself. You still need to have your own body as a litmus test. You still need to do your own library organization, invent your own Dewey Decimal System, create your own video mood board montages of all things art, technology, skills, word connection, analogies, etymology, history, philology, everything that comes together to fix a thought so that it comes to you like a bolt of uranium, and it doesn't even say anything, but you just know what it means because the Saturnian edifice of what underscores it has been laid in time. I feel we are learning to embody this frame by frame experience of reality, and how we edit ourselves, and even the manifestation of TikTok and AI and chatbots and the technology that we use to mimic us and to keep up with us and to reflect us and to generate more versions of us to see ourselves through. It is all coming full circle with what this moon represented as a transit for me, for the placements that I'm dealing with on a personal level, for the experiences that I'm dealing with on a personal level, and for the collective tones, tropes, stereotypes, discourses, and revelations that I have been witnessing that is not my story, all of that being a key in the lake of reflections in which I do have the observer privy to the narrative, which is my story in every moment, and needing to stay true to that as it is embodied, with its light side, its dark side, its shadow, chiaroscuro, contrast, creating the picture of life. You know, the picture of you in the image and likeness of all the processes of Source, God, the universe, and your name is that power. Don't let anybody take it away. Don't let anybody dump connotations on that name to weaken its significance. Call upon your name's meanings and make up mnemonics to letters. Do everything that you need to make it mean more than what you have been told, because if what you have been told is true, you wouldn't have had a strife, you know. And once you have the truth, it's just like, oh really, like, man, like, I'm bored now, you know what I mean? um and learning to appreciate the vacillation, the waxing and waning of the light side and the dark side, the absorption and the reflection, and learning that there is something that resonates and rings through as a multidimensional, multiple, meaningful key between every kiki that you can be conversating, every level of meaning that the transit is imprinting on everybody's conversations right now. In their fractality, they will express some of what I am saying, or all of what I'm saying. But I can know me, and I can know what has been said, and I can make a connection between the two. It's not about forcing something to be true that isn't there. It's about learning to see this as a language to understanding your own psychodynamic synthesizing process. The way we are trying to teach AI with prompts how to create a picture of what we want to see, you need to learn how to use your words to create the reality that you want to see. And the key is within you. The rings of truth, the solid truth, the physical, practical, all the elements of truth, the ether and the ore, the gold, the silver, the everything. All of these keys are within you. So are you going to be afraid to open Pandora's box? Are you going to be forever Epimetheus, hindsighting? I need to speak for myself too. Like, my Neptune sits at the tail end of Sagittarius, dealing with a lot of horse shit, guys. And then it's like in Capricorn behind it, it's like telling me, well, here's Uranus. Remember that joke on the Big Bang Theory? So yeah, the Aquarian mooning Saturn, just ringing on a string of notes that brings so many harmonies together about Apollo, the sun, the black sun, the relationship of Aquarius and Scorpio, the relationship of all the angles, and the relationship of words, so that the way the body has its reach into the environment and immunity from the environment, the way the psyche and the moon and the significations of the moon goes through a waxing and waning process, Gemini and the moon's goddess relationship through the Manilius planetary joy scheme also for me relates to prepping through the bull's eye, to always be like what we are experiencing now as a lesson. Uranus and Rahu type of energy, because we are having it in relation to Taurus. And I think I heard the North Node exalts in Taurus because it's a very dispersive energy. So Taurus is a grounding energy, and it's like all the eyes of self that you sent out to Shatabisha circle the world and see what is happening in the shadows of every corner. Me looking through all these rabbit holes of conspiracy theories and everybody out there conflating the exoteric pop culture narratives with the esoteric astrological interpretations. And some people were telling you that this and that and this and that, and oh my god, this person is the Antichrist, and this is in the Bible, and 666. Like, it was getting so fucking crazy that I just felt like, amongst other things, I just like I needed to start my channel and like start asking questions and start opening up doors and portals with these words, so that we aren't all walking around with this cognitive dissonant trauma soup of fixed thought samsaras ringing in our psyche, and constantly like having like this mask of Aphrodite Libraness, but hiding the darkest shadow behind, and going through this chimeric process of splitting and then creating this cancerous situation where we don't split properly and we just create these growths of things that are not good for us. Like the Ophiuchus Sag point with Aquarius in the fourth as Cancer kind of like happening on the eighth-ish cusp. So being erosive of invisibility and death, as per the significations of that house in relation to what the descendant means, we can see that the way the moon is the keeper and preserver of the sun, which is why the Asterian astrology actually gives Shravana to Apollo, where in the Vimshittari system, Shravana is a moon-ruled nakshatra. So that coming to light with everything, with Britney Spears and her conservatorship, herself being a Shravana moon, getting the influence of the Uranus trine in Taurus from the Rohini, Garden of Eden. Like, was girl really living a good life? Or, like, what did Candace Owens say? Like, her brain was really kind of liquefied by a cocktail of drugs, and she is no longer her whole self. And I feel that is very evident. And Brittany, I'm sorry if you watch this and you hear me say this, but I hope you are okay, and I am a hope for the best person type of person, but I will look for the worst possibility type of person also. Not because I want the worst possibility to necessarily be true, but because I don't want to be like screwed over by people. I've learned very young that well, if you don't do the work to do your homework, people can lie to you to your face and you would never know. So I taught myself common knowledge so that I would know who is bullshitting me in whatever capacity, telling me they have this or they have that or whatever, and then I would have a way to test them on that. And once their airtime kind of like runs up for the topic, then I would know like, nah, you're really not that knowledgeable, or that this or that, whatever you are claiming or boasting about. So to me, that has just always been my motto, even before I could call it that. Like, I was a truth seeker. And if my mind told me to kind of like pursue a line of questioning or just ask more questions or whatever, it wasn't unnatural for me to pursue that. In a Sag way, I was always very, like, I was a beast in the pursuit of knowledge. Granted that my love for it was very much initiated because, as a golden child, at first, we are told, you are so great, you're doing amazing, sweetie, and all these things. But, when you show your gifts as a 6'2", just naturally doing your thing, and people be like, oh, you should do this, why aren't you doing that, you should do this, like, I would always be like, whoa, like, could you chill? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what it was about me. Like, whenever I was kind of like put on the spot to perform it like some circus monkey, I would just be like, no, I'm over it. Like, I can't. But when I'm just by myself, I would get immense enjoyment out of, doing any sort of craft, skill, artistic endeavor, anything creative, anything that I can immerse my senses into, be entertained by, as a Taurus, cusping, Mrigashira, Gemini. I can see that part of myself being very much still yearning for the birth of Mars cut that happened from the Rohini, and that Scorpio or Libra moon just kind of like reminding me of like the twin flame that is missing, which the Mercury in Scorpio video, literally my astrologer does this podcast, and I'm always so grateful whenever he uploads, because he doesn't upload often. He actually teaches classes on natal chart synthesis, so whenever he's just kind of like bringing a point together as a more shorthand version of something that came up with his classes, because he sees, that people come with different sort of stereotypes in their head about what a certain sign or planet is and what it's going to do. And then when he teaches his process of functional lights and six pairs and the mathematical asymptotic relationship the natal chart synthesis bears to the generation of prime numbers in a five principled complex system that organizes itself, that opened so much doors for me. And coming full circle to finding my voice and taking my shot towards my shine, MC, Maga placement, and finding my confidence to work past seeing things what it is, calling things what it is, Chiron in Libra, tropical obscuration and whatever, and narcissistic abuse and internalized complex PTSD and potential ADHD, and maybe it's just a little bit of like just scared of social things, which is funny because I'm actually a very social person. I have a lot of, I've just grown more distasteful of seeing bullshit quicker, seeing patterns and complexes and coping mechanisms and projections and all these things quicker than people either like my age, because I couldn't relate this information to the adults around me, because either it would get me into trouble, or it was just like there would be a disconnect between like things ringing true and them wanting to like face that they embody that darkness that I just brought to light, right? Like my Lilith in Virgo, just kind of like picking them apart sometimes. And like a Mars Rahu conjunction, like I could hold my own. And that being in Virgo, Mercury sign, like, oof, guys, like, you do not want to argue with me. You know what I mean? And, but obviously I've learned what has been working about that and what hasn't been working about that, and just learning to put my Mars North Node energy into like the penetrating focus that I need to go into the Virgo realm and bring it to the 10th house through the functional light of Mars. That is my process, that is my karma, that's mine. Like Whitney Houston says, hey, that's mine, you better lay low. So that's the thing. We need to like know ourselves and not be ashamed of carrying ourselves with that, I almost want to say like earring, but Saturn in an earring like a Shravana listening star, always kind of like having that whisper happening and listening to that voice and knowing that voice is supposed to belong in your body and that it's yours and that it's bringing the ring of truth to you from the codon ring of secrets, and knowing how to be in tune so that you can pour that out and be the channel, be the 12th house Apollo Shravana prophet to the Aquarius, and learn how to bring the muses of history and music and art together by seeing how all these things through their shadows and brightness, chiaroscuros together, because it all forms a collage that makes a grander picture of the non-separateness of Uranus and Gaia, or Uranus and Aphrodite, even if there's a castration by Kronos time, cutting these frames up into piece by piece experiences in your narrative and embodiment of truth. The multiplicity of it is that it existed all time and in no time, and I just don't want to be weird about speaking like that. All these esoteric concepts can sometimes be so flip the world on its head, but that was what the birth of our archetypes and Velikovsky's theory with the cosmogenesis was. The world kind of flipped on its head, and we literally had to create the language that we have today. Notwithstanding people's timelines and projected timelines and what evidence history supports and what history is supported by evidence. Dylan Sakosha is always like, if I can have a coin, then I can coin it to the word. You know what I mean? But I can't say that Mars has always been a warrior. Maybe he was also like a divine child, cradled by Venus, being, shrouded by all these flaring seashell-like depictions. If you ever watched the Thunderbolts project, I would highly recommend looking at those visuals, because yeah, I didn't want to like screenshot those because I just felt like I didn't want to rip off that presentation. It's a really good presentation, and I haven't seen those illustrations elsewhere because it's an animated projection of how the Velikovsky theory played out. So looking at that and looking at how words are used today and what they meant back then, and knowing that there are still these resonances of truth, that they are still being almost ritually embodied with like sameness and relationship. And that's another weird thing about the Aquarian archetype and the number 11, for example, is that they will look at what makes everybody the same so that they know what to do different. They will know how to bring everybody together on the thing that they need in common, even if everything else about them is different. And that's the beautiful of how Aquarius one-on-ones with its Leo ego balanced on the 7th house cusp like that. And why the midheaven for the Aquarius comes to the peak of the Scorpionic archetype. It's because Anuradha and the flower of life being watered by the waters of life is the root and offspring of the interplay between like the Sun, Agni, Kritika, Taurus in the 4th, and the root soil Gaia-Uranus relationship of the rain and the lightning and the heavens and the light of the sun. You know, esoterically they say the sun veils Uranus and the moon veils Vulcan. So Ganymede was the cupbearer of the gods, right? But Vulcan was the one who made sure that they got the trinkets and got their respects paid, because where the archetype transcends out of the Chitra, Vulcan, Asclepius happening, cusps from Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Ophiuchus, galactic center, all of that, Sag. It's like the transformation of like some sort of lead into gold beast of self into like the balance point where like Asclepius like stands with like the 1 foot, you know, and then stepping off the ecliptic, and when you track his eyes onto the bullseye of the galactic anti-center Rohini, and that key pointing the way from Sirius, Betelgeuse, you know, through the bullseye to that gate, then it's very much giving me a moment to appreciate how much truth can ring through at once if you allow yourself to be embodied in all the layers, all the different ways it can be sedentary, crystallized, inked, impressed, samsara, whatever you want to call it, and then learning to like have a frozen picture of that and learning to thaw that picture so that you can pour it out as light codes, as waters of life, as wisdom, as everything that the Aquarian needs to connect people again to their subconscious intellect, second house Pisces placement, so that the Mercury, Revati, Venus can exalt once more, facing the mirror of self in Hermaia, you know. So yeah, that is it, guys. I hope you have a wonderful experience of the super full moon, Pisces and Aquarius energy blended, because we need both. And in a world of either or, I am not about to be either or. I want both. And having both Saturn and the moon, El and Aphrodite, Isis and Ra together in the sign of Jupiter's highest exaltation and esoteric hierarchical rulership, it makes so much sense that Jupiter chose to exalt in the 8th sign Cancer placement, Leo Navamshapada of Pusha Nakshatra, which is ruled by Saturn. And that is where I'm going to stop, guys. This is Kalen, the Key Keeper. Have a good night.